All right, Joey, I think we got this.
I think we have it made, Jeffrey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you again. I look forward to this every week. And this week is crazier than ever. You're Joey Clark, the radio personality extraordinary, and I'm Jeffrey Tucker, Foundation for Economic Education, Liberty.me.
See,
And this is our weekly hangout.
Yes, I love this hangout, and see, you actually provide valuable information to people. I just blather with the best of them on the radio airwaves. So,
well, now you were telling me. You were telling me that say, I'm not in Atlanta, but you were telling me that Trump was actually in Atlanta today.
yeah, I've tuned in to the live performance for about 5 minutes is all I could take. And he repeated himself within that 5 minutes about building the wall, and it's going to be a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it, and getting the crowd to chant with him. And I can't take it. I don't. His whole style makes me uneasy.
I was into it for a while in the sense that like it's performance art, but it's really like a show who had too many seasons, you know. So I agree with you. I can't watch it anymore.
Well, and I mean, I've told you before, but we had Donald Trump on one of the shows I do, at the top of the hour. And I have to say, I'm ready for the buzz to come back. And by ready, I'm not necessarily eager, but I'm just preparing myself, because there is an electricity in the air when the guy, especially in our native South, for some reason, he is really lighting their hair on fire and leading in the so-called SEC primary states all across the map.
No, Joey, he's goddamn Hitler. I'm telling you, Hitler had that same charisma, you know, that same, and people didn't listen to what he says. We look back and I go, what? Why were people supporting Hitler? Well, you know what? Today, or yesterday in South Carolina, you had the hoi polloi out voting for Trump, going, well, at least he says it's true, or whatever. This is a guy who's promising to break into your iPhone and coerce a company and enslave a bunch of computer programmers to rewrite the iOS so that he can have access to a billion people's private financial information.
Well, and
I mean, this guy is a maniac, and he says until iPhone does this, he doesn't. You know, we should boycott Apple. I mean, he is peddling tyranny.
Yes, and he's tapping into people's sense of pride. Somehow they're getting their self-esteem vicariously through Donald Trump seizing power and practicing this tyranny. I made the point today on the Book of Faces. Some people liked it, some people very much did not like it, that Apple designed this encryption software for the iPhone to keep criminals out. And as far as I can see it, it's working for now. It should ring bells to people that you design something to keep people who you don't want getting into your stuff and into your information, and all of a sudden the government is swept up into those people. So this is no surprise to you and I, but Trump is selling tyranny in I think, the garments of the nationalistic sense. This is not, again, anything unusual. It's been seen before in history. It's just now the American version here in, what is it really, 2016. Look at what's going on. It doesn't seem that different from some of the old reels. We have better technology. We have one would hope is, and you've talked about a great deal, that this technology could lead us to getting around this centralized state. But this fight in particular is the fight in the future. People keep saying, oh, it's over one iPhone that terrorists use.
No, it's everything. It's everything. It's the whole status of the digital world, whether or not this is a proposal to essentially, and I don't know whether or not Trump understands this entirely, but that is a proposal to nationalize the digital age. Essentially, it's the ultimate sort of socialism, nationalization of everything we do in our lives that is related to the digital world. You know, selfies, the texts, you know, our Facebook accounts, our Snapchats, our, you know, where we've been on Uber, you know, pictures we've taken of ourselves, we've sent to people, who our friends are, who we email. You know, just think about it. I mean, people should consider this. I mean, it's like if somebody had your smartphone and had interrupted access to it for several months to do nothing but look through your data, what would they know about you? And what would that power give them over you? You know, that's the way people need to be thinking about this question.
Well, and they may very well know more about you than you realize, because we use these devices that you realize about yourself.
Yeah.
We use these devices fairly absentmindedly, like just, you know, we don't go back and comb through everything we've done. And I'm sure you will find things out about yourself when you that you didn't ever know. Then you add a certain professional level to it, know what you're looking for. It's very unseemly. It's a long time ago, I wrote a essay called "What a Porn Star Can Teach Us About the NSA," and it's a long-winded gag, but also a serious point behind it, is that this is the NSA and their abilities are the voyeur to end all voyeurs. That, you know, what they can find out about you, especially with just the metadata program, is more intimate than anything you may call your sex life. So, you know, in my mind, to quote my favorite artist, they can bug my phone and peep around my home. They only see you and me making love inside. Yeah, you kind of have to. And this makes me think of if this is the way we're going, if they're going to start commandeering these technologies, then you have to just live freely as though you're always being watched. Screw you. And don't be like, let it change your behavior in a way where you're acting sheepishly and not saying anything to criticize the government. I've heard Judge Napolitano talk about this has a First Amendment element as much as a Fourth Amendment element, because it chills speech. It makes foreign companies working with the United States very skeptical about doing business here, because how much do these certain companies know and the government regulators know about their if secret information? So
if Apple gives in on this to a U.S. despot or the FBI or whatever, and by the way, the president in this case with Trump really matters, because the president can make that margin of difference between whether the FBI is just expressing a wish or whether it's really a true order. But if they get away with it in the U.S., then of course every government in the world's going to want this, and then it's Pakistan, and then it's Saudi Arabia, and then it's China, and truly the whole world is enslaved. That sounds like hyperbole. It's not really. Plus, I don't actually think it can happen. I don't believe that Apple is going to go that direction, because people would dump their phone immediately. I mean, if they comply with the feds on this point, you know, I'd immediately shift to Android, and if the main Android technology doesn't allow encryption, then there'll be plenty of things available on the darknet, you know, that will do the same thing. So they can't win this ultimately, but still, just the desire and the wish. I mean, I find it just amazing that Trump has been able to convince, and we'll get to the other candidates in a second, but you know, he's getting people to get out of their easy chairs and leave their beers, you know, behind, and go to the voting booth to vote for the guy, because they think that he's going to do some good for the country or something. He's openly promising to invade their privacy and potentially steal, you know, the whole of their digital lives from them. And people seem to be unaware of it. And this is every man's worst enemy.
Well, and some of this anti-PC movement, I have to mention another candidate to make my point.
Yeah.
Ben Carson talked about collateral damage. What an awful euphemism. The killing, the murder of innocent people in war, that we shouldn't do that. Well, what a politically correct thing to say, that we shouldn't kill innocent people. And so now you listen to Trump. He now says common sense. This is another part of the anti-PC movement. Again, I don't like political correctness, but when you start saying the Bill of Rights and our basic liberties as a free people are politically correct, right, in the face of these bad dudes that want to kill us, as Trump puts it, then we are to a point of know-nothingism, that everything is just about what you can get away with. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to power. That what are the different ways to use power? The other guy's going to use it, so we should use it first to our advantage. In this case, the terrorists.
I think, am I right that, because several people pointed this out to me, because Trump has been I think, Maybe just I pay attention to him more, but it seems like he's been more aggressive on this Apple case than anybody else. But does every candidate now currently in the race favor the FBI victory over Apple? Is this true for Cruz, Rubio, Hillary Clinton, and Sanders also?
I have a question mark around Ted Cruz. I'm not certain if Ted Cruz is for or against this. And Cruz is a bit Weasley on the issue, but at least he speaks about having a fealty to the Bill of Rights. So he, though, is the only one left doing that. Marco Rubio, Hillary Clinton, Trump, and I'm not expecting Ben Carson or John Kasich to much go anywhere, but their opinions on these things aren't that great, much better. Hillary Clinton, when they were talking about the encryption a while ago, this is before Apple loses this case and gets the order from the magistrate judge. Hillary Clinton said, oh, some people are going to talk about freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Okay. And she's mocking it. The same day, Trump said, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Who are these people? We're being attacked by bad dudes. The same week, Marco Rubio came out and said, we're fighting a civilizational clash against radical Islam, and I don't want to hear about this ideological silliness. He was answering a question about Senator Rand Paul, saying we need to defend our freedoms, the Bill of Rights, as we defend ourselves against those who would do us harm. And Rubio called the Bill of Rights ideological silliness. So this is where we're at, giving up our liberties under the fog of fear.
Somehow yesterday, I guess it was Saturday night, because I had just gotten through speaking for a YL convention. Somebody told me that Bush dropped out, and I thought, this is something of a momentous occasion in the history of this country, because Bush was the chosen Rockefeller candidate. He was the candidate of the old establishment. The people who want a kind of stable graft, just the old-fashioned nation-state racket as it's always existed. But they're not insane, Right. The Rockefellers would never give you a Mussolini. They'd never give you a Stalin. Never give you a Hitler. It's always going to be, an Eisenhower and a Carter. This is the nature of the people they favor, and I tend to think that that's Jed. And the way he just packed up his bags and walked away, it was like, it's not working anymore. Something is very, very different. And I'd like to believe that different thing is good. I probably would have someday, if you'd told me 10 years ago, there'll be a time when the Rockefeller's chosen candidate drops out because nobody supports him, and they'll have nobody left. I would have thought, oh, that's awesome for liberty. Then now I'm looking at this, and seeing the Republican field at this point is a difficult one. You've got the nativist, racialist, fascist versus the global Democrat, Pax Americana statist, versus the sort of crazy theocrat, which I can't, I don't even know how do you balance these things out. It's a tough one. I've been very, very hard on Trump, but that's because his errors and his evils seem so obvious to me. But without him, what are you left with? It's hard to say.
Well, and I really see the race going forward on the Republican side is between Marco Rubio and Donald Trump. I think Ted Cruz kind of hit a wall in South Carolina, especially with a lot of those evangelicals going to Trump, which we talked about last time, and it's a bit baffling. But I talked about it some this week, and I reconfirmed that evangelicals are trying to break out of the mold of, oh, we just like it when you pet our heads and our particular issues. They want somebody, and I'd never quote him, but let me bring up Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, I saw him in the background on our TV screen, our monitor in our radio studio, and it was just a quick clip, and he made a fantastic point about what's going on in this cycle. Is, Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and others have said Donald Trump isn't a true conservative. Rand Paul made the case that these people don't truly understand the Bill of Rights, don't love liberty. You had a Ted Cruz also saying, Trump's Christianity is a little off here, and Trump did it back to him. But Limbaugh's point was this, is that all these people appealing to a purity of philosophy and ideology. And it goes to Marco Rubio calling the Bill of Rights ideological silliness. And Hillary Clinton does this ideological silliness line, that philosophy at this point does not matter. That makes me want to cry, because I think philosophy and our ideas are only what really save us from our emotional hells. But he's right. You listen to the folks out there voting, they might even talk about a few basic principles they like. But at the end of the day, they want somebody who's going to get something done. Yep. They really are willing to take the risk for the guy who tells it like it is, get something done. These people have been preaching me the philosophy that I hold dear, and they've screwed me the last several decades. They've never been true conservatives. Closest we got was Reagan. That's what I hear. So they're saying, what the hell? It is, again, the what the hell vote.
Let me ask you, I've been thinking about this all day without being able to generate an answer in my own head. And I thought, well, what better person to ask than Joey Clark? And it's this. How culpable do you think the American left is for the rise of what we're seeing today in the Republican Party?
Oh, quite culpable. If we can go back decades, if not half a century, if more, a lot of the infrastructure, the state infrastructure that somebody like a Donald Trump will use, was built and advocated for by the left. And a lot of the things that are holding people's, a lot of their fear over the long-term, stability of entitlements, over a lot of the welfare programs, it does, again, makes me think of Hayek and George Orwell, who point out that the communists did the work of centralizing for the fascists. And, they didn't want to be fascists. They didn't want to be, not all like people, somebody like a George Orwell, who's a democratic socialist, doesn't, I don't think, want to completely tyrannize people. But they do the work, and Orwell was a man enough to admit his own philosophy led to this centralizing that a strong man could use. I think the only thing the left is not culpable for is a lot of the national security state. The left was against what was going on in Vietnam. In many ways, the left anti-war tradition on the left is sound. I wish they had more power. They're more used by the Democratic establishment. That's my answer in a nutshell. And I'm thinking out loud here.
The backlash that, and this is what I don't know is, it's hard for me to sort of measure this, but a lot of the support for Trump and for Cruz and for Rubio really, it comes down to the American bourgeoisie has a feeling that they're under attack. That their values are being ridiculed by the establishment, this Obergefell case in the Supreme Court, suddenly imposed on the entire country, obligating every local government to codify same-sex marriage, which many people feel like is a fundamental attack on their children, on the institution they love. The rise of sort of a sort of high-pressure PC culture, that was making people feel as if they can't speak freely. The advance of the egg-headed professoriate, and their anti-bourgeois attitudes. I mean, there's a lot, and also we, been going through 8 years of a president that, is widely perceived to not be a, pro-America, whatever. I think that's the most ridiculous one. But you know what I mean? I mean, there's a certain sort of a backlash culture that's associated, and I'm wondering if maybe, like things went too far, and to the tipping point in a way, so that the American middle class is like, what, screw it all. We're going to come back ferociously.
Well, I swim in that sort of backlash every day. And I want to challenge you a little bit on Barack Obama. The idea that he's a secret Muslim born in Kenya. I like it's idiotic. And I like folks who bring that up on air. I like to say, no, actually, he's not a citizen. He was born in Newfoundland. That's where he was actually born. If we're going to play this stupid game, and he's not a secret Muslim, he's an atheist, I think, actually, if we're going to play this stupid game. But no, I think there is an element of where Barack Obama himself went too far, where on the night he's elected, he said, it's time that we fundamentally transform the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Glenn Beck made so much money and got quite the following by examining what does he mean. And not a real conspiratorial way. Barack Obama fundamentally disagrees with the classical liberal approach, in my opinion.
I agree with you on that. I think that's right. I mean, I remember reading very sympathetically many interviews that he gave early on his first term, and he never talked about human freedom, for example. It was not part of his way of thinking.
And he doesn't like, there's a quote, and it's an audio clip you can find out there, where he sees the Constitution in particular. I could focus on the Constitution, and we could, you and I could disagree with some of the more majoritarian parts of it and how it centralizes power even more. But he looks at the Constitution and he sees the great flaw of it is a concept of solely negative rights. That what about our positive obligations to one another?
Right.
Like food and shelter and all these things. This is, of course, what he's about, and a lot of the left is about. And it is, I think, part of why the backlash is going on. Some of the backlash culture is the stupid stuff we just mentioned, where they think he's a secret Muslim, hates America, all this sort of stuff like that. And so they're arguing and they're fearful of specters of their own making. But then there is a grain of truth to this nightmare they weave. And the president and the Democrats have not done anything to help mollify these people's concerns. Not by any stretch of the imagination. They make fun of them. They call the Tea Party jihadists. They painted them as terrorists and as radicals. The left of the Democrats, especially the pundits, the punditocracy on the left, needs to watch out, because as they were saying that the right was becoming more right-wing and radical, same is happening to the left. Look at Bernie Sanders and look at your own program. So I think both parties are lurching to certain extremes. Unfortunately, they're leaving out the liberty parts and lurching to these more extremes. How do we use power? And of course, this is where the divisiveness in the nation, or the divisiveness of our politics right now, comes from. There's so much power in DC that you will have a lot of people upset on election day. Probably about half the country will be very, very upset.
Yeah, divided and angry. It's a brilliant point, by the way, that all the institutions that Trump is going to use, or whomever would use, were largely built by the left in the service of sort of left collectivism, now going to be used for right fascism. And that Hayek nailed this is right on point. But let me just say something about this Obergefell decision, which I more or less favored. I mean, like,
I do too.
In the abstract, I mean, when it came down, I was like, well, that's the right thing. I mean, I thought it was a victory for human rights, basically, and fairness. But I did worry at the time. I mean, I remember thinking, probably 90% of Americans, 80% of Americans disagree with this thing. And this is very important to a lot of people. What the family is, who their children marry, what their faith says is right and wrong. This gets to the very core of what really matters to people in their lives. You've got the Supreme Court saying, yeah, it's true that, since the ancient world, marriage has consisted of one thing, but we will now declare it can consist of many other things. And if you disagree, you could be guilty of a crime. And I worried about that, because I wondered what kind of backlash that would create. If it was just going to cause a level of alienation on the part of the faith-based bourgeoisie that was going to unleash a kind of hell like we've never seen before. And when people were cheering that decision, like, yay, human rights, I was like, let's wait and see. So in your world, do you think that that's an important consideration? I mean, does that anything I said tap into anything you've heard out there?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I mean, some of it taps into where we're going to hell. There's a old clip of Paul Harvey, a famous radio broadcaster, and it's a brilliant piece called "If I Were the Devil," and it's there's certain elements that, well, based on what he says, maybe I am the devil on some of the things I advocate. But there is that old sense that the country is not what it used to be. And then also on the non-religious aspect, on the it's not even a cultural aspect. I do hear people who are very frustrated that, okay, now we just have Supreme Court justices who will essentially act like kings, like a committee of dictators, and they'll just decree. And this is where I was happy about it in the abstract, like you said. I wrote something up on Liberty.me that was actually took Scalia to task at one portion, because Scalia, talked about whoever thought that the right to love who you wish was a right. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think it is. But where I have a problem, and a lot of people, I think, have an issue, I wish it wasn't a 14th Amendment decision. I wish, and we don't ever have Supreme Court decisions based on this amendment, but I wish it was, because it would fit better. The 9th Amendment, the right to marry and love whom you wish. And the 9th Amendment essentially states that this listing of rights here in the Bill of Rights is not an exhaustive list. Your rights are as numerous as the stars. Now, it's a flourish, but it doesn't actually say numerous as the stars. But we don't have any Supreme Court decisions based on that amendment. And it would seem to fit a better model that's more at peace with a sort of libertarian philosophy, rather than the idea of the 14th Amendment, where the federal government incorporates certain civil rights. So it's a different concept of, I see the right to love who you wish and marry who you wish as something very natural, and as something that no government gave you. Then that's quite different than, no, the government gives you this civic right. In the same way the left talks about healthcare as a right. It completely ruins the idea of marriage in many ways, because we don't get rid of the idea of the government being somebody who just maybe enforces the contract. No, it's going to set the standards, and it's going to tell you what you can do. And we didn't get rid of that notion. We just opened up the franchise, which is better. It's progress of a kind. Again, I agree, but it's not the best possible world.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. I think some things can be right as rain and true blue and awesome, but you have to think about the future. And sometimes I just feel like things have gone too far, too fast in those directions. And it's led to this kind of backlash, and I worry about the backlash culture and what it can lead to, and the anger at the left, both right and wrong. I mean, its good aspects and its bad aspects. It strikes me as so intense right now that people are willing to put up with anything and vote for their own enslavement, just as a kind of sort of as an act of vengeance, almost.
Well, and it's not just anger at the left. They certainly disdain Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and our dear Emperor Barack Obama. And I've been right there with them in the trenches, hurling invectives at them. But I've also been in the trenches hurling invectives at that chinless foghorn leghorn of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, at the inexplicably orange man, John Boehner, at Lindsey Graham, and fight with me, my friends, John McCain. A lot of these folks in the Republican Party, it is, and this is Trump's appeal. Well, it's definitely Trump's appeal, that screw all you people in power. And, you would think you and I would like that sort of mentality in a way, but it's leading not to screw you people in power because you have power. It's more screw you people in power because you're not using it the right way.
Yeah, you're not doing the right thing, and you've got massive power, and you're sort of botching the chance to impose a global dictatorship at the hands of competent people like me. It fits the interwar script so well. It's just amazing.
It is a bit nervous. It makes me nervous, very nervous.
So let me ask you about Sanders. First of all, does he have? Is there any? Is this just silly to even be talking about this? Does he have any real chance of unseating Hillary for the nomination?
No, unless the FBI investigation turns something up. And even if the FBI investigation does turn something up, Hillary is indicted. I think then Joe Biden or Michael Bloomberg gets into the race at the last second. So I think Bernie, though, I don't want to say he has no chance because he is really coming out of nowhere. Hillary did not win by that much in Nevada, and she had to pull this off by getting Harry Reid and a lot of the unions, as a lot of the punditocracy is talking about. This was typical old school backroom politics, how she won. And the one element, though, is if you did not have Bernie Sanders in this race, the Democratic turnout would be even worse than it already is. They said the turnout in Nevada was 35% shy of what it was in 2008. Some of that might have to do with this new caucus system they have in Nevada for the Democrats. But in other states, this pattern is the same. Republican turnout is historic at levels not seen in years. And Democratic turnout, well, there's a Barack Obama hangover and the Obama coalition is gone. So if Bernie wasn't in the race, that number would be even lower. And Hillary Clinton, better watch out. The people aren't supporting her. The old school sort of Democratic coalitions are not there. I think her only hope for winning the presidency, if she is in fact the nominee and doesn't end up wearing orange, she could rile people up by saying, look how scary Donald Trump is. Of course, I don't want a, working gal's Henry Kissinger in there either. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's. I haven't gotten a fix yet on just how dangerous she might be. Somebody tells me she's less dangerous than Trump, but I can't say that for sure because she seems to sort of, have socialism plus Marco Rubio's foreign policy, and plus the establishment. I don't know. She's a government fixer and no ideals whatsoever.
well,
I think she'll definitely be worse than Obama. As I mentioned to you before, in his last State of the Union address, I just had a profound sense of we're going to desperately miss this guy in about 12 months.
Well, I can't bring myself to say that, Jeffrey. I will not miss him by any means. I just find the man, and I don't mind arrogant people, but I find the man has brought a lot of the backlash culture that we've been talking about. But I just realized something when you have Bernie Sanders in my mind. And you mentioned a few shows back, are people watching this whole thing like a reality show? Mm-hmm. And it does seem like that it's almost that people are picking a style, a sense of speaking, a certain way of speaking about the nation, that it's going to hell and we got to save it with a drastic change. And the establishment, the Rockefeller, like Jeb Bush, people have had enough Bush in this country. And then Hillary's Kate McKinnon did a brilliant line on an SNL parody of Hillary. This Bernie Sanders is offering this gourmet, 7-course meal. I've got some chicken that'll do. And that's essentially her campaign, that I have experience, I'm competent, we need to tweak a few things, but really the status quo isn't that bad.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where this is going to go, but it does seem like the people are, I don't want to just call it emotion, but we've had emotion in every election cycle. But there is a marked difference of I'm voting for somebody because of their rhetoric and their impatience, to be honest, with the status quo. It's happening on both sides. We come back to that point. We're pissed off at powerful people.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's no chance that Sanders can get the nomination, but if he did, it strikes me as, somebody who's, I've, dedicated my life to sort of anti-socialist causes, my loathing of socialism is what drove me, academically and what drove me professionally, my entire life. That in 2016, I would find myself, less unhappy with a Sanders victory than I would be with anybody else in the race. There's a level of irony there that I'm having a hard time processing. But within Sanders style democratic socialism, you do have an element of liberalism there that that I don't detect in Hillary Clinton, oh, pardon me, or Trump, or any of the rest of the Republicans. I mean, just his position on the drug war, for example. Which
Well,
is a
and
false movement.
Well, and I like there's that element of liberalism, as you say, that classical strain. But again, I go back to that Rush Limbaugh point: is you and I, and a lot of the people that we would consider political friends and allies, even if they're not, true blue libertarians, whatever that means, uh, they care about ideas. Like I can have a conversation with a lot of people on the left, people on the right, and we can come to an understanding because we care about ideas. But there are some people, it scares me to no end that you can't reach them. It's not about the ideas. It's about the popularity contest or being part of something greater, or it's maybe one particular issue that they really are hardcore on to the point of being dogmatic and a bit fanatical. I don't think a lot of the youth vote, the people backing Bernie Sanders, would even have the eyes and the mind that you have when they hear socialism. They more see,
No.
oh, this guy's, as you put it a while ago, these kids want to smoke pot and they don't want to pay their college tuition.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is the level we're at. This is the baseline we're at in the nation. And it's a matter of finding the right tone of voice in order to tap into that.
I suppose it's possible, and this is probably the most foolish thing I've said in weeks. But I'm once again tempted to think that maybe the Libertarian Party could make a showing this year, actually, in light of all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
I know we say that every 4 years and it never happens, but it seems like of all years, this might be the year.
It may, and it's an interesting cast of characters with Gary Johnson, John McAfee, and Austin Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really taken them seriously, not in the sense of them as individuals. They all have done some fairly impressive things, but I've not taken their nomination process that seriously.
Right.
Well, number one, I've asked myself, why is the Libertarian Party not doing so hot? Why is it never done well? Well, I think we have to start off by admitting that their mascot, their animal, is a hedgehog. Who wants to vote for a hedgehog? You can't. I don't like.
Hey, something just occurs to me, and I do read National Review.
Yeah, not
okay.
not religiously, but I
right. I've dabbled in it in the past. It's like I find conservatism tedious, but this whole Trump thing has driven National Review in a libertarian direction. You got to pay attention. I mean, the last few weeks, I mean, probably 4/5 of the stuff on the new articles there you'll find actually compelling and exciting. Pretty good material actually, all told. And I wonder if Trump is having this effect of driving genuine conservatives in a libertarian direction. And wouldn't it be fascinating if Trump gets the nomination, which apparently he's going to, and Hillary Clinton gets the nomination, that people on the intelligent right would find the whole mix so toxic and horrible that they might actually go for a Johnson or probably not McAfee, but maybe I can't. Peterson sounds like a joke, but anyway, maybe that would be supporting Libertarian Party. I mean, it's possible.
It is possible, but I have to hit a big hairy but here, that Trump is driving the National Review in two completely polar opposite directions. They are on, especially domestic policy, on the immigration issue, on issues of trade. I guess that's foreign policy too. Didn't we talk about that? That they are going in a more libertarian direction. But what Trump said in the last debate about 9/11 happened on Bush's watch, they lied about weapons of mass destruction. I saw several articles coming out of National Review that are absolute the essence of neoconservatism. I don't like to use that word, by the way, because it's been so bandied about, neocon, but they are freaking out that they're losing the history, that short-term history here, that Trump could upset it. And this is why I think Bush in particular pulled out all the stops before getting out of the race. You're like, this isn't just about me getting the nomination. This is now about me defending our whole family's legacy.
Right.
And so it's driving the intelligent conservatives, as you put it, in polar opposite directions, because Trump's a bit of a contradiction himself, that on a lot of this military policy, he's not as hawkish as Marco Rubio, but on everything else, he's just as tyrannical. And to be honest, I think he'll be more tyrannical in the military realm if he gets a war that he wants to fight. It's easy for him to be the guy who criticized, but when it's his intelligence people and his war to fight, he's going to be.
I don't know if you saw this, but Sheldon Richman, who's like one of my favorite writers on the planet frickin' Earth.
I was listening to Sheldon with Scott Horton on the ride home today.
Yeah, I mean, this guy Sheldon is just so awesome. He never stops being amazing. Really, I love him so dearly. But he ferreted out how Trump actually was not against the Iraq War until until like 2004, I think, was his first statement against the Iraq War. And so the war had already commenced, like 2 years before Trump. Did you hear about this? I mean, he wrote a big article about it in Liberty.me, and I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, I did hear about it, and I saw Trump speaking to it in other interviews. If he was on with, of all people, one of my favorites in radio broadcasting, Howard Stern. And I think 2002, and he made some comment of like, yeah, go in there, blow shit up. Yep. And Trump has defended himself by saying, I was a private person. Nobody cared about my opinion. I hadn't really thought about it. And Howard has a way of making you.
He's been right, saying that he was against the war. I mean, so this is an absolute contradiction to what he's been saying.
Right. I don't know what to take from Trump. What's the truth here? Yeah. But he has been selling himself as against the war.
Yeah.
And he thinks that's good politics. So, to be honest, I don't want to get inside the true mind of Donald Trump. I would rather, look at what he says and take it at face value in the sense of like, I don't believe, anything he says, but I certainly will take it face value because that's what other people are going to do when they vote for him.
That he had used in a speech a couple of days ago, this fake story about, I don't know, General John Shepard or something in the Philippines that killed 30 Muslims with bullets dipped in pig's blood, and he killed 29, left the one, and said, go tell your friends. Do you know about this? He told this story. And he told the story, which is strange because I don't know if there are any Muslims in the Philippines, but anyway, he claims that this is what happened and this is the kind of spirit we need in this country. And he looked it up on Snopes and just look up bullets and pig's blood. And it turns out the whole thing is just like an internet, sort of the thing that the greatest generation forwards to each other in email.
Well, it's kind of like him saying that I saw Muslims celebrating 9/11. I saw it on television with my own eyes. And that's an interesting statement because you can't really disprove what somebody's personal experience.
Yeah.
It's like trying to disprove a religious experience. If they believe it, they're going to believe it. So, and I think for the most part, you should respect people's subjective experiences, and especially when it matters of faith. But when it comes to trying to take over the country, maybe we should be a little more skeptical towards this guy, though it's this element of the backlash culture, the anti-PC culture of if you say it boldly enough and forcefully enough, then it's got to be true.
Yeah.
He's telling it like it is not telling the truth, damn it. Damn it. I want to get that across to people. And you know what's scaring me, Jeffrey? I mentioned a phrase that I brought up a while and said, what does this mean? Can you see him behind the desk? And I think what it does mean is when you look at that person, do you see a president? Like in a true sense, like they'll have monuments built or they'll have a huge portrait done. And this is what's scaring me. I never could say that about Mitt Romney. I don't see him as a president. I don't see him as a very powerful person. Though, you read some of the stuff about him, he seems like a very decent man in many ways with his family. But when he walked out on stage as the nominee at the Republican National Convention, I'm like, oh, shit. This is real. And he looked like a president. And so what's scaring me, and probably why I need to start wearing adult diapers to work, is that Donald Trump, it's becoming real. I've always been skeptical of him, a bit fearful of him, but I didn't think that it would ever get to this point, and it's going to start feeling more of a reality the more he wins. And it's, I think, for folks like you and I, only going to get worse.
Well,
This feeling, this fear we have, it's only going to
it's going to intensify, and I can't even imagine 4 years of this. And it's been remarkable to watch how the national press has slowly adapted to the realities. I mean, 6 months ago, HuffPo was running this guy on the entertainment section, and only reluctantly putting him on the political pages. And the New York Times, National Review, everybody with any kind of voice on the internet has decried and denounced this man, and none of it matters. He just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And to see people sort of adapt to the weird realities, like, okay, let's take him seriously. This can actually happen. What's going to be interesting, Joey, and I think it's going to be fascinating to follow, is to see how over the coming months, if this continues, you'll see the Republican establishment, sort of warm up to him, and gradually, say, well, it turns out he's a pretty reasonable guy, Yeah, he said some clownish things, but really, you can work with this guy. He's a real businessman, and isn't that, in the end, what we favor? And I'm looking forward to seeing this sort of gradual enlightenment on the part of this sort of this class of professional pundits and hangers-on, who will decide that they better get on board the Trump train or get run over, essentially.
Well, and you describing that just made something go off in my head, an idea come to mind, that all these folks now accepting it. And I was perusing some of the cable news today, and they are certainly kind of, oh crap, this is real, like what I was just talking about. But I wasn't denying it for that long. Especially once we had him on our radio show, I'm like, oh, this is real. He's actually firing people up. But if people keep saying, oh, well, Trump just calls people names. He's the chaos candidate, as Jeb put it. He's rude. He denigrates women and immigrants and all this sort of stuff like that. Like, yeah, he does, and it's awful. But think about how those people who are now admitting that it's real, and who, I agree with you, will go, oh, he's not that bad of a guy. That's exactly what they tried to do to Trump at the beginning. They didn't listen to him. They weren't as awful in the content of what they said, but some people really just called him names, just wrote him off. Like you said, HuffPo puts him in the entertainment section. Look at this clown up there. And Trump just beat them at their own game.
Mm-hmm.
He beat them at their own game. So if you want to blame anybody, blame themselves.
This is part of the appeal of Trump, actually, on the part of many people on the right and people who are not on the left, is to see him just running circles around these idiots, essentially. And it's delightful. I mean, the HuffPo, which I follow, and just the absurd sort of bubble, despite their astronomical traffic or whatever, the ideological bubble in which sort of HuffPo writers, editors, and owners live is hilarious. And I think you and I talked about this, when New Hampshire won, when Trump won New Hampshire, their headline was, New Hampshire Republicans support racist, sexist, xenophobe, for the nomination. And, I'm reading this headline and going, okay, racist, a lot of people have long ago decided that this is not an epithet at all, Sexist, nobody knows what that means. And xenophobe? I mean, are you serious? A word that starts with an X that ends with some, I don't know. It's crazy. Nobody even knows what the hell that means, so the pointy-headed intellectuals, who are thinking they're hurting Trump by calling him a xenophobe. At the very least, they could have called him a nativist, so it makes a little more sense. But xenophobe?
No, this brings to mind, I have to share from one of the radio shows I do in the afternoon. The host and I have to admit, the host in the afternoon is quite hardcore on the immigration thing, and I vehemently disagree with them. But to your point about the usage of these words, we were just going back and forth, like calling each other these names, like, you xenophobe. He's like, you nativist. I'm like, you're a jihadist. It's like, well, it would just go. It's kind of reminds me of that classic SNL bit between Richard Pryor and Chevy Chase. We were just going back, and you're right that they don't. The elites, it's like, and I love pretentious language,
Yeah.
but at a certain point, you have to use words that the people you want to insult actually understand.
Yeah, you just can't put together a big string of these terms that progressives use among themselves, with great decisiveness, and stick them at a headline and expect them to sting. They just it just doesn't work.
Well, and and this is what I do every day. I usually satirize the language of the left. So I can't stand the phrase war on women. It's not a literal war. There are awful policies that the Republicans would want to impose on women.
That's interesting.
Awful policies. Let's call out the policies for what they are. But when you start going, it's a war.
Yeah.
Oh, stop it. Just stop it. It's over the top. You want to, it goes back to Barack Obama leading this backlash culture. One clip that gets played nonstop by the right is him that it's a bit grainy and he thought nobody was recording him. He said, these people out there who have antipathy towards others and they cling to their guns and their religion. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's how you're going to paint a large portion of the country, and both sides are guilty of it, they paint these caricatures of the opposition, then you're going to solidify those people as folks with antipathy to others who cling to their guns and religion. They're going to go, well, that's what you think of me? Well, screw you, buddy. Yeah. Okay. You think I don't like you already? Well, okay, I don't. It just solidifies it even more.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and this is why I don't think that the sort of left-wing war against Trump is working very well. On the other hand, neither did National Reviews. I mean, National Review took a big risk in coming out with that big cover story. I still think they did the right thing, but now, of course, it's the line on National Review is that these are generals leading a phantom army. They've always been intellectuals that aren't really in touch with people, and they have nobody really with them, which has probably always been true in some ways. But nonetheless, I don't know what a choice they had really. I mean, they had to speak out. I mean, I like that National Review issue in general, except for the fact that they're probably all supporting Cruz and Rubio, who have no chance apparently at this point.
Right. This is where I think it's now on the Republican side. Let's say it's a 3-man race is what the media is saying, and it's the 3 people we thought were going to be the nominees on the Republican side at the end of this thing: Trump, Rubio, and Cruz. I honestly think it's a 2-man race. I think Cruz has been bitten by the werewolf that is Trump, and everybody sees him. There's something off about that. He must transform under the moonlight or something weird. He's like barks whenever there's moonlight around. There's something weird about Ted Cruz. He is a nasty guy, as Donald Trump would say. But I've been trying to come up with a way of how do you criticize Trump that his supporters will understand.
I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that.
Well, I feel my profession is partly responsible for the Trump phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Well, I was just talking about that sort of satirizing, the hyperbole, invective. It's stuff I love, and I'm getting better at it each day. So the one thing I've come down to is you have to paint Trump not with these buzzwords that get progressives going,
right?
Or he's not a true conservative that get give wet dreams to the intellectual conservatives. No, it has to be more personal on Trump's level. So what I like to say is, listen to what Trump says. People are comparing him to Reagan. He never talks about liberty, though, where Ronald Reagan did all the time. And also think about how Trump always talks about himself. I'm going to make it better. And that sort of stuff tends to work. That if you point out to people, you don't call him a narcissist, describe how he's a narcissist. And it makes people go, Now, it's like sometimes shouting at the ocean to stop. Just shouting into a hurricane. It may not work. It may not work. I think the die may be cast here. And here we go. I think Trump has this. So as we prepare, I suppose we got to come up with better ways to fight this, because it's, I think, going to be the reality. It's like I was saying before, it's real.
You know, there's you know, I always try to look at the plus sides of these things. I mean, the first thing I point out is what I told the YAL group the other day. I said, you know, at the last days of the nation state, you can expect the political system to become ever more ridiculous, filled with criminals and charlatans and crooks, almost exclusively. And we have to sort of prepare for this. You know, this is what happens when an institution becomes decrepit and increasingly irrelevant to people's lives. That it you know, you've got, you know, the last days of Rome here, you know, essentially. And so you've got, you know, the worst elements rising to the top. I mean, Hayek predicted this in what, 44, but it's become ever more true now. So there is that. That's not something I entirely anticipated, but I see it in retrospect. The other point is, I think that there might be something good here, Joey, for the cause of human liberty itself. It's going to be a period of internal searching and introspection and moral, ideological value clarification on the part of people who truly favor human liberty. What is it we're for, and how are we going to get there? I think we've gone through about 10 years of sort of diversions in many ways, and now we don't have that much to show for it, really. But we could come out of this stronger, bigger, more strategic than ever.
Well, I first have to say, if you had kept talking there for another minute, I might have swooned. This is, I mean it, I love you, man. This is, I can be a bit despairing. So this is fantastic. And I went back and revisited a chat you had with Sarah Squire, who I think is just awesome.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. And y'all were pointing out all the incredible pieces of literature that are written from prison and in exile. And suffering is one long moment, and it will focus the mind. So thank you for the optimism. Like I said, I can be a bit despairing and cynical. So I like what you're saying. It may focus the American people to go, ooh, what did we do? What did we do?
Yeah, yeah, and perhaps this had to happen. You know, it can't have been a smooth transition from the age of Leviathan to the age of liberty without some bumps in the road. This is definitely a bump, so to speak. So, and something tells me it's just something that's necessary, and we're gonna buckle down. And the awesome thing about it is, Joey, that we have these beautiful friendship networks that have developed. You know, extending out of Liberty.me, but including so many beautiful organizations out there working hard. And this is the way you build. You know, it can't come by supporting some one guy who promises to bring liberty to the world. That was always an implausible claim. So we have robust networks that are going to get stronger as the years go on. We just have to stay safe and stay upbeat and stay in touch, you know.
Exactly. Well, and I'll work on the upbeat nature. And you have certainly inspired me in that way. And just, I've told you, I'll tell everybody out there, my cynicism flows forth from my disappointed idealism. So I do believe in making things happen. I'm actually quite hopeful for the future. But if you don't have hope, what do you have? And I agree that the personal, you know, we all have heard the personal is the political. Thank you, feminists, for that. Yeah. But I say, no, the personal trumps the political, no pun intended.
Yeah, always must.
It really does.
I'll miss you at ISFLC, but we'll be in touch next week. I look forward to it. Lots of things change every time we speak, and it's awesome. That's why I love talking to you so much.
I look forward to it. I would love to hear about some of your experiences there at ISFLC.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Make it.
Yeah, I'll send you lots of selfies.
All right.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.